viewers. This is our Cartoon Academy, and today we'll talk about the Steven Universe cartoon. Let me remind you that at the resolution of the story, White Diamond, the ruler of the intergalactic gem empire, realized that she was wrong and the universe was freed. Here, the animated series is often reproached for the fact that such ending is meaningless. Why would White Diamond, who ruled the empire for thousands of years, suddenly change her mind after one conversation with Steven? And is it normal that Steven, at the end, one might say, forgives the space Nazis? In fact, calling them Nazis is very incorrect, but I will not go into historical terms. Similar claims are often transferred to arcs of Yellow and Blue, but the main ones concern White. She is the main antagonist, and at the same time, she had the least screen time. And I partly share these claims. The ending is really weird, but firstly, it's not completely meaningless, and in this video I will explain why. And secondly, there are reasons why the final arc should have been staged that way, and I will try to find these reasons. Blue and Yellow appeared during the animated series and had a lot of screen time in the final arc. Their arcs are short, but not at all critical as it is sometimes presented. With the White's arc, it is more complicated. She had little screen time. However, this is often exaggerated. First, by the beginning of the final arc, we already roughly know who White Diamond is. Usually some of the characters' screen time is spent on revealing their backstory. Next, Steven interacts with White in the episode Lex from Here to Homeworld. In the following episodes, we do not see White, but this does not mean that nothing happens to her. For example, in fact, Pearl was her eyes. In the episode Together Alone, White watched the ball. In the final episode, Change Your Mind, Blue and Yellow suddenly stand up against her, and then they address her with sensual speech. And finally, the scene in the head of White's statue takes more than 12 minutes, and every little detail in it is important. Why, in general, diamonds change their minds. Since the death of Pink, Blue has softened a lot. At the same time, over the past thousands of years, she had existed under the conditions of only White's propaganda. On the one hand, this could make her a very crazy fanatic, but on the other, it becomes more clear why she could change her mind when she received an alternative point of view. Blue and Yellow wouldn't listen to various lesser gems, but at least they listened to Steven the Diamond. Their supposed sister could influence them greatly. During the final arc, both Blue and Yellow went through many emotional moments. Some were there caused by their connection with Pink, as when Steven reproached Blue.
How many times did you lock her in here? How many times did you make her cry?
Somewhere they were caused by a connection between Blue and Yellow.
When we thought Pink was shattered, when she abandoned us, I alone was there for you.
However, many people do not understand something important about the reasons for changing their minds. But I will return to these details a little later. As for the White's change of mind, this is a confusing issue. White clearly has narcissistic traits.
I'd rather not spread my uninhibited self so thin, you know.
She considers herself perfect.
Now they are perfect. Now they are me.
And she treats everyone around her at best with condescension. What happened during the scene in the head of the statue that influenced White? I will not analyze the dialogue between White and Steven in detail, despite there is what to talk about. But at some point, when White talks about Pink Diamond, Steven replies,
Even if it is, even if it was, you're talking about my mom. You're not talking about me.
the human principles of reproduction are unknown to gems. Like many characters before her, White sees no difference between Steven and his mother. And so White divided Steven into two parts. She expected the result to be Pink Diamond, but instead it turned out two Stevens who merged into one Steven. In White's mind, she is perfect.
I'm supposed to know better.
But it just turned out that she had absolutely no idea what Steven was. She didn't.
Know better.
Also, thanks to Steven's defensive abilities, White, despite all her strength, could not hurt him. Right now, she can't do anything. So, White gets angry and yells.
You're just acting like a child! I am a child. What's your excuse?
White is embarrassed. She blushes. She turns a little pink.
The part I always have to repress.
She becomes even more nervous that she is no longer perfectly white.
After all, I'm every color of the light.
At the same time, in essence, she is literally ashamed of her emotions. When yellow and blue call her off-colored, probably here White is having some kind of a mental breakdown. And at that moment, Steven speaks to her, and it influences White. And so many people note that it is nonsense that space Nazis just became good like that. But the thing is that during the final arc, the diamonds did not become good. Yellow, for example, defected to Steven and Blue when they talked to her about the pressure White puts on them. Yellow did not have at all, like Peridot, an arc where she realizes that what they did before was wrong. Blue was already softer than other diamonds by the beginning of the animated series, and she loves Pink very much. And she went over to Steven's side because she wanted to help and make amends to Pink.
But if you were happier on Earth, maybe this world was failing you.
And White, too, by the end of the animated series, did not realize things that during her arc the aforementioned Peridot realized. And no, the universe wasn't freed, but Steven at least managed to convince her to fly to Earth and help cure Gems. We can't tell exactly how Rebecca Sugar saw what the Diamond arc endings were. But if you look at them the way I described above, then everything becomes quite meaningful. It's not very good that many questions in Steven Universe are answered not by the animated series itself, but by the full-length film and the epilogue season. But they do indicate that Rebecca Sugar didn't mean that by the end of the episode Change Your Mind, the diamonds were already good.
I've been saying please and thank you even to lower life forms.
I've disbanded my armies. I've liberated my colonies.
This, again, is just my guess, but it is possible that there are reasons why the creators, even if they wanted to, did not begin to make for Diamonds an arc, which they did for Peridot. The fact of the matter is that the animated series already had a Peridot arc. Creators will not make 3 more arcs with the same meaning. Besides, then there would be no intrigue. It was probably clear to most viewers long before the end of the Peridot arc that she was going to be good at the end. The Peridot arc is still interesting. The audience is still wondering what exactly the story of Peridot will be. But this happened in the first half of the animated series, not at the end like the Diamonds arc. It would be boring to watch in the very finale 3 more arcs, similar to the one we have already seen, knowing the resolution in advance. So the creators did it differently. The cartoon is trying to convince us that the essence of the Diamond arcs will be the same as that of Peridot.
I'll show them all the error of their ways.
However, Diamonds do not show any changes until the finale, especially White. The atmosphere is very oppressive, and then there is a scene in the head of the statue, and this scene makes a very strong impression. I think the emotional effect we can get from this is higher than if we just got 3 new Peridot arcs. I hope my explanations made the finale more meaningful. I'm not going to analyze in this video the claims that there were no space battles in the finale. These claims are completely naive. Steven Universe is not about space battles. This cartoon is deeper. Now I suggest you consider the option of like, subscription and comment. Goodbye everyone!